we're just going to kind of quietly go through the biggest crisis this world has. No, it is not the whale, or the whales. That's a big crisis. It is a big crisis. 22 years ago, I put together a group that actually got Humphrey, humpback whale, out of the Delta. And a couple of weeks ago now, 10 days ago, a bunch of folks that we were working with phoned me up and said, "Let's get back on the field, coach." And I'm going, "Oh, come on." Anyway, we got a whale stuck in our Delta here. And all of you finish up tomorrow afternoon, right on schedule. You can get in your car and drive up and join the traffic jam. So anyway, that's the whale story. And actually, I guess whales are kind of symbolic for what we need to talk about, and that is really the threat that exists to our environment. But I don't think I want to start there right now. What I'd like to start with was what I heard on the radio driving in here. The news was on, the hourly news, and it came up this way. And the Pentagon reports that 8 more Americans died today, which today would be, I guess, almost over in Iraq. 8 more, and there was 7 yesterday, and we're headed for the biggest monthly toll ever. And then the follow-up was that the summer looks as though not only will it be hot, but extremely dangerous in Iraq. You and I have no more important mission than to make certain that we have a Democrat in the White House. It's absolutely critical, not only because of the war in Iraq, but in the larger sense, the national security. Our nation's security is often seen just in the issue of Iraq. And we all know that it's clearly one of the major security issues, made far worse. Al-Qaeda and all of that is a very serious issue, and we have to deal with it. But where the Republican Party has taken us, and don't think for just one moment that this is about George W. Bush. It is about the Republican Party philosophy. Where that party took us, where the leadership of that party took us, is into an unnecessary war with a pack of lies and an unending nature until we get in office. And then we, the Democratic Party, will be left with a god-awful mess, but we'll find a way to straighten it out. It is the Republican philosophy that got us into this. It's not just George W. Bush. It's really about their notion of what this nation's security is all about. It's, in their view, strutting around the world, being the biggest bully on the block. That's not how our nation will be secure, and it's certainly not how we're going to secure this world from what is correctly called the climate crisis. For example, even to this day, in the face of what everyone, 90% of Americans, believe to be a fundamental necessity of dealing with carbon-based fuels, the Republican administration continues to promote an energy policy that is based on carbon-based fuels. Not an energy policy that will move us to a new paradigm, not an energy policy that will actually reduce and eliminate the need for carbon-based fuels, but rather an energy policy that is firmly embedded in oil and coal. That energy policy puts our nation at severe risk because we get our oil from the most dangerous places in this world. It is a crazy, dangerous, and extremely risky policy that the Republican Party and George W. Bush's administration continue to this moment to pursue. Well, there's a little bit of talk about alternative fuels. There's a little bit of talk about biodiesels and ethanol and the rest. But it is minuscule compared to the need. And as long as this nation continues to pursue an energy policy based upon oil and coal, we are in serious jeopardy as a nation. to say nothing as individuals and communities as a result of climate change. What do? Well, we elect a Democratic president, and we make certain that Congress and the Senate remain in the hands of Democrats, so that we can finally establish a national energy policy that no longer holds us hostage to those dangerous places in the world. Many of us said when the earliest days of talk about doing something in Iraq, we said it was all about oil. And we were right. It was and remains today all about oil from the Middle East, the most dangerous place, the most dangerous region in the world, and yet our nation is addicted to and dependent upon that place for oil. And similarly, our other wannabe allies depend upon the Middle East for oil. And if you're not satisfied with that, I was talking to some friends over here who served in Nigeria in their post-Peace Corps days. Now that's a safe place, isn't it? Nigeria? Holy moly. Venezuela? Russia? Indonesia? And how about the Gulf of Mexico? The most dangerous places in the world for a variety of reasons, often politics, sometimes just hurricanes and weather. We cannot allow our nation to be hostage to these dangerous places. So our goal as Democrats has to be to establish a different energy policy. One that's based upon renewables, one that's based upon conservation, upon efficiency, and upon knowing our role in the world in which we live. And we can do this. There are solutions to all of these issues. Efficiency is readily available. Some of you are not from California. In California, we like to strut our stuff. That after all, we are hot but cool. We are the most energy efficient place in America. The energy per capita energy consumption in California is about half of what it is on the East Coast, and it is the lowest per capita consumption in the nation. But we're not finished. We could probably go half again. And we could do that through a variety of ways that would make a great deal of sense. Transportation efficiency. We still love our Hummers here, even though our governor says that his Hummer will someday be hydrogen. In the meantime, it is gasoline and diesel. So we can do that. We can move to plug-in hybrids. And certainly all of us ought to. And in fact, it ought to be a Democratic policy in the upcoming elections that we are going to change the CAFA standards. We're going to force higher automobile pilot sales. Now, there was an article in, I guess it was Time Magazine this week, that the meltdown or the sale of Chrysler for 1/5 of what it was purchased for 8 years ago, really gives the auto industry a chance to change and survive. Well, I would suggest that if they want to change and survive, they better get on the road to hybrids and fuel-efficient cars, otherwise they're not going to survive. And can we cause that to happen? You bet we can, by getting these higher mileage standards in place. And we have to do that. A lot of options out there. In fact, there's a bill that's been introduced by one of our members of the California Senate that would give a specific tax credit to any automobile manufacturing company that wanted to build plug-in hybrids in California. And we're talking about a serious, serious reduction in the taxes that automobile company would pay. So maybe we not only can move to deal with one of the most fundamental sources of carbon and greenhouse gas emissions, that is the automobile. Some 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions in this state are from transportation. But at the same time, we can create economic growth. And there is an enormous potential here for us as Democrats to seize the environmental issue. It is a fundamental national security issue, and we must be strong on national security if we're going to win. And secondly, we can take the environmental issue, deal with climate change, and simultaneously create a new economy here in America. It could be a homegrown economy. We could actually make cars that are relevant to the world in which we live. Gas prices in Hawaii, what are they? High. Oh, pain, but then you can't drive very far. Unless, of course, you go around in little circles. So you just took back your offer for a speech at your convention. Anyway, well, here in California, we love our cars and we love to drive. And that is 40% of California's emissions. And California ranks 12th in the world in total greenhouse gas emissions. So we've got an incredible challenge here. Fortunately, our legislature's made a lot of progress. In fact, so much progress that our new green governor has decided that it's politically wise to be on board and touts himself as the greenest of the green governors. And all I gotta say is, Arnold, go. Keep going. You're on the right track, just keep doing it. And as Democrats, we'll do your heavy lifting, we'll do your work, and it is the God-given right of a governor to take credit. And I suspect you've noticed in your own states that's the case, for better or for worse. But in any case, we are very aggressively moving on a whole series of policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the state of California. And what it offers to us is an opportunity to build a new economy. And we're going to do that. Maybe we'll be able to manufacture cars here that are the super efficient cars. But we also know there's another set of opportunities out there that deal with biofuels, a new enterprise for agriculture. There are certainly the solar issues, everything from solar photovoltaic and the new and improved ways of collecting energy from the sun directly, and something that used to be very common in California in the 1920s, and I think still some in Hawaii, and that is solar thermal. Second biggest use of energy in every home in California is hot water. Now, if you have hot water that's hot enough, it can also be the source for cooling. And as we look at these opportunities, we will generate new industries. So we should very boldly, as Democrats, seize this issue, which we're doing, but also seize it in the context of economic development. So we have three things now that we could work together on. First of all, the national security issue. No longer having our nation subjected to the whims and desires of dangerous places around the world. Dangerous political leaders and other kinds of dangers. Secondly, we can create ways of reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. And thirdly, we can generate a whole new industry, not only in California, but around this entire nation. In order for us to do this, we need a solid public policy. One that's at the national level. It's good to do it at the state level, and most of our states are already doing that. But it has to be done at the national level also. I was here in San Francisco about 10 days ago at a very interesting program. It was called the California Clean Tech Open. What in the world is that? It's not a golf game. The Clean Tech Open was a competition that's sponsored by several companies, Google and what was it, Lexus and a few others, who are sponsoring a competition among dreamers, entrepreneurs, researchers, to figure out ways of increasing gasoline mileage, capturing the sun's power, storing power, a whole series of things. The one I like the best, you Hawaiians would love this, was last year's winner. Last year's winner at the California Clean Tech Open on the movement of goods and services, people and goods, not services, was a kite company. somebody told me after my speech, oh, you got to go see the kite company. I go, huh? What are you talking about? Turns out that these characters figured out how to make a kite that has like 20,000 square feet of kite, and you attach it to a ship, and it pulls the ship along. Very interesting. Could it work? Maybe. These guys are really serious. And if any of you remember your history of the Pacific, in the early days, like the 1500s, sailing ships follow not only the current, but the wind currents. So you attach the kite to the front of the ship, and it pulls you through the North Pacific down. We don't want to stop in Washington. No, you stop, not the East Coast. Down Washington State, Oregon, all the way to the port of Oakland, Long Beach. I know, I'm being too parochial. But in any case, these kinds of ideas, these clean tech opens, and the kind of competition, the notion that we can do things differently is embedded in us, that we can do things better is part of our psychic as human beings. And if we set the foundation through tax policy, through governmental policy, through a fundamental national policy that says this nation will no longer be dependent on oil and coal, a lot of things will happen. We could reduce, for example, and save a whole lot of money by eliminating the oil depletion allowance. And we could have that same subsidy over on the other side dealing with renewables of all kinds. There are many, many ways to deal with this issue of climate change. And the reasons we do it are for our future. Because right now, you and I, and indeed all of us across this entire globe, are condemning future generations to a very, very serious set of problems. And in many cases, it is a terminal problem. The report that came out from the Intergovernmental Conference about 3 weeks ago talked about the effects of climate change around the world. Where Patty and I served in the Peace Corps in Ethiopia, about 60 million people there now, and the chances of a large percentage of those people dying of famine and dislocation and war is extremely high, as is a good portion of Africa. And indeed, the report said that if you are poor, you're in trouble. Only the wealthy are likely to be able to make it through the climate crisis that we are passing on to the next generation. It is a major problem. More immediately, and I'll just use California as an example here. No, let me do this. Let me use California and the Colorado River Basin. Where's my Colorado folks? Pat, you're around. Who's you are. The snowfall in the Sierra Nevada mountains is expected to be 30 to 70% less in the decades ahead. The snow is melting in the Sierra Nevada mountains and the Colorado Rockies at least 2 weeks earlier now than it was just 10 years ago. We're talking about some real serious implications on water policy for everyone who represents and lives in the Western part of this nation. We know that the Colorado River is in the 6th or 7th year of a prolonged, what may be a very prolonged, and certainly a 7-year drought is already a prolonged drought. What does that mean to California? It means that we are in water trouble. Let's see, we're pretty well up on the hills of San Francisco here, but that Pacific Ocean out there, it has already risen 6 inches over the last 100 years. And it will certainly rise another 6 inches in the next 10 to 15 years, and quite possibly 2 to 3 feet. The ice is melting, and we know that. In 1995-96, when I was Deputy Secretary of Interior, Clinton and Gore asked 5 deputies, Interior, Commerce, Treasury, Defense, and Agriculture, to figure out the American agenda for the Kyoto Conference. We had help from NOAA and NASA and other agencies. And we spent the better part of a year preparing the American agenda for the Kyoto Conference. Everything we studied, and it was our task at Interior to study the effect of climate on water, on animals, and on the flora of this nation. We knew then, 6 years ago, that there would be radical change. What we've learned in the last decade is that the change is not only radical, it is very rapid, and it's occurring now. So, for California, as that sea level rises, the California Water Project cannot work. It won't work. Those of you that are familiar with California, just to the east of here is the largest estuary on the west coast of the Western Hemisphere. It's called the Delta. That's where Delta and Don are hanging out right now. Now, in another 10 years, they wouldn't have to worry because it would be salt water. The rise of the Pacific Ocean is going to pour salt water into the central delta. All the fresh water coming into from the rivers and then pumped to Southern California into the agricultural valley, San Joaquin Valley, flows through the delta. And with the ocean at its past level, there was enough fresh water to hold the salt water back, and all was good. You raise the Pacific Ocean 6 inches, you've got salt water in the delta. Delta and Don can stay there, they'd be quite healthy. They may not have much food, but they'd have salt water. Unfortunately, agriculture, the Silicon Valley, Los Angeles do not thrive on salt water. And the Colorado River is not a good source because it too is going to have far less water. So for those of us that live dependent upon the rivers, dependent upon the rainfall and snowfall, global climate change is a very serious crisis now, and it's going to get a whole lot worse. So here in California, and I know the other states that are dependent on the Colorado River are going to have to radically change everything they do that's dependent on water. It's going to take a lot of money, and it's going to take a lot of time, and we don't have much time. The ice on the Antarctic peninsulas those ice shelves could collapse. Similarly, the Greenland ice shelves, and it could happen immediately. And there's some evidence that it may in fact be just that way. Tropical diseases, they're already here, and they're going to be more of them. So what are we going to do? Well, we are going to elect a Democratic president. That's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And that president, and I know you all have your favorites, must take up this issue. Must take up the issue because it is a fundamental national security issue. And if we do so, that is, if we elect a Democratic president and maintain an even greater majority for Nancy Pelosi to lead in Congress and for the Senate. And I suspect we have some folks that are from Nevada here, so Senator Reid can use a few more votes. If we do that, then we can get at this fundamental issue. It is a crisis. It is nothing short of a major crisis. And along the way, I would just suggest that as Democrats, we just keep beating this national security drum and add to the climate crisis 2 other crises. Education. The economy of this nation cannot compete in the world economy unless we have the best educated workforce in the world, and we are far, far away from that. And that is a national security issue. Thirdly, some, 6 to 7 million Californians, 50 million or so Americans have a very serious personal security crisis. They don't have health care. And the rest of us in this room who are not yet 65, we too can have a health care crisis if we lose our job. So the third national security issue has to be the establishment of a universal, single-payer health care system. That's not the subject of my speech, but I'll leave you with another 90 seconds of it, and that is that we know how to do this. We know how to establish a single-payer universal health care system. We did it 40 years ago. It's universally available. And you get to choose your own doctor. And instead of a 30% administrative cost. It has about a 14, maybe 15% administrative cost. In total, that's both at the provider as well as the payer side of it. So, when they tell you we don't know how to do it and can't do it, you say, been there, done that. It's called Medicare. So don't tell me we can't do it. We have done it. And people literally live to get into it. Right? I'm looking forward to it myself. So as Democrats, we're going to deal with these issues. We frankly have no choice. Because one of the strongest of all human emotions is to carry on the next generation. It is an emotion that is embedded in us, and it is an emotion that we're not going to forget. And we will not abandon the next generation. Because everybody in this room, you and I are the power players. We really are. You and I are the people that will decide literally the fate of the world now, right now, in the next 18 months, as we in America select the next president, the most powerful and most important position in the world. That's our task. And I know you're up to it. Many of you I've met, many of you I've known for a long, long time. And the rest of you, well, I'll see you in the trenches. Thank you very, very much.